right. Well, thank you. And welcome to Colorado Libraries for Early Literacy 2024 Annual Conference. You are at Cena con Cuentos, Spanish language story time, and a shared meal with Sara Meldrum. Our session ends at 1:20 and will be followed by a 15-minute break. If you run into any issues with the live stream, we encourage you to try to refresh your app or browser window. You are welcome to leave comments and questions in the chat, and we will try to get to those at the end. And I will turn it over to Sara.
Great. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Good. Okay. Hola, hola, nos decimos hola. Yo estoy bien y espero que tú también. Now let's sing hello to Jen. Hola, Jen, saludamos a Jen. Estamos bien y esperamos que tú también. Now let's sing hello to me, Sarah. Sing along with me. Hola, Sara, saludamos a Sara. Estamos bien y esperamos que tú también. So the translation of this song is hello, hello. We greet each other. I'm well, and I hope you are too. And this is how I start every story time for my program Cena con Cuentos, that is a Spanish language story time. I learned this song from Canta Maestra on YouTube. She has a lovely collection of songs in video that so you can learn a new hello greeting song or choose a different one each time. And I use that song every time, regardless of how many kids are there. I go around the room and I greet each child by name. It really helps me to learn the kids' names. I think the parents learn some of the other kids' names that way. I'm never sure how much children are paying attention to each other's names, but surely some of them learn some of each other's names that way too. And if it makes kids feel welcomed, we make a connection when I sing their name to them, and it makes them feel invited in. So I find that to be worthwhile, though sometimes with enough attendees, it does take a long time. So let me introduce myself a little bit now. I'm Sara Meldrum. I live in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I work at Williamsburg Regional Library. I've been there for a little over 10 years. I'm a youth services librarian. My library has 2 buildings, though we don't operate on a branch system. We go back and forth between the 2 buildings. So there are 12 of us youth services staff members, well-funded library, and we have a service population 100,000 over among 3 funding municipalities. So let's see, what else did I want to tell you? We have a growing Hispanic population as well. Anecdotally, we know that the schools teachers are seeing a lot more Spanish-speaking kids in their classrooms. I recently went to an outreach event with the school district where one English learning program director told me that they have 90 families enrolled in their English learning program at their elementary school, with a total student population of 500, and that the vast majority of those are Spanish speakers. I myself am not Hispanic. I am not bicultural. I am a white woman from California, but I'm a Spanish speaker, and I came to that by living in Buenos Aires, Argentina for about a year when I was 6 years old. My family lived there for my dad's PhD dissertation research, and I went to school and I played with friends, and eventually I was playing with my sister in Spanish because I was young enough to just acquire the language in that way. So I'm fluent, and I have sort of I'm not a native speaker by any means, and my vocabulary definitely has some holes, having learned as a 6-year-old, but I do have that sort of instinct for the language that comes from having acquired it at a young age. when my family returned to California, my parents required that I speak Spanish exclusively with my dad, sort of from then on. And that was what allowed me to retain my skills into adulthood. So I'm very grateful to them for doing that. I deepened my interest in world languages when I lived in Germany for a couple of years as an adult and learned German as an adult, which is quite a different experience learning a language um, as, as opposed to simply acquiring it as a child. And that experience also gave me a lot of empathy for the experience of immigrants in this country, what it's like to navigate a place where the dominant language is not your native language, and all the difficulties and the frustrations that come with that. Another professional and personal interest of mine is music. I grew up singing in choirs and continued through college. I was a music major in college. More recently, I have been a family music teacher at a nonprofit music school where I taught baby and toddler family music classes. And I still do outreach visits for the music school to Head Start classes where I teach preschool music. So I've always wanted to bring these two uh, interests and skills into my professional practice. And the most direct and most rewarding and impactful way that I've been able to do that is through this program, Cena con Cuentos. So let me tell you a little bit about that now. Cena con Cuentos means dinner with stories. It has 3 parts: story time, an activity, and dinner. Each part takes about 30 minutes. The story time is made up of books, songs, and rhymes. The activity might be a craft or a directed game, or sometimes it's just free play inside or outside. And then we always do dinner that is catered, that is provided by the library through a Friends of the Library grant. I book 2 rooms for this so that we can have story time in one room and then move to the bigger room that's set up with tables and a buffet for dinner. Sometimes we craft at the tables too. Let me talk you through a sample story time that in June. Often choose a theme, though not always. And the theme of this one was birthdays. It was the beginning of summer. School had just gotten out, and so we celebrated with a collective birthday party for everyone. So we started, of course, with the greeting song that I taught you. And then we read this book, Es mi cumple, that's from a Spanish series, Así es la vida, that's sort of about kids' concerns. Of course, a major concern for kids is their birthday and what it will be like. So this book is about what it's like to have a birthday. When we got to the part about how your family may sing to you on your birthday, we paused and we sang Cumpleaños Feliz. At the end of this book, we went around and I asked all the kids to tell me in Spanish the date of their birthday. That was something that a lot of kids needed help with. And then we sang Las Mañanitas, which is a popular Mexican birthday song. And most of the adults in the room were not Mexican. They're from all over, Honduras, El Salvador, Spain. But it seemed like everybody knew Las Mañanitas. It was a really beautiful sing-along with all of the adults joining in. Then we read this book, Sí, No, from the Skelletown series by Rodi Montijo. The only words in the book are sí and no. So as we went through it, we talked about the illustrations and I asked the kids to tell me what was going on as these little skeleton kids have triumphs and disasters as they're going to a party and getting gifts. And sometimes the kids would respond to me in English and I would ask them to repeat it in Spanish, or I would translate for them into Spanish. And then we sang a song because it has this repeated, oh no, that's very enjoyable and reminded me of this book that I would like to teach you. It is a translation of Slippery Fish, and I learned it from Alina Celeste on YouTube. It goes like this. Una sardina, una sardina, nadando en el agua. Una sardina, oh no! Fue comida por un atún, nadando en el agua. Un atún, un atún. Um, um. Oh no! Fue comido por, and then we get un pulpito, octopus. Then we do, next is un tiburón, a shark. And finally, the last verse is una ballena, a whale. Una ballena nadando en el agua. Una ballena, una ballena. Um. Los comí. I got you. That's how I like to end it. All right, so we're back. And then we read How Are You? ¿Cómo estás? That is from a sort of series by Angela Dominguez where there are these bilingual giraffes, and one of them speaks in English and one speaks in Spanish. So for this book, I would read the English and then I would prompt the kids to repeat the phrase in Spanish. In this book, in these books, almost all of the phrases are repeated in both English and Spanish. So I prompted them to fill in the Spanish for me. And then it ends with an invitation to a fiesta. So I got out the shakers, put on some music. We did a shaker song. And then I had balloons for kids to play with while they waited for their turn to do the fishing game, which is where you get to fish for a present. It was a birthday party, so there had to be presents. So I hid behind the sheet and put their presents on the fishing line. We played with the new toys and played with the balloons, and then went to dinner where, of course, we had cupcakes. All right. So whom is Cena con Cuentos for? This is something that I've refined a little bit over the course of doing this program. I've always said that is for families that speak Spanish at home to one degree or another. And I've refined it a little bit to include that somebody in the family must be a fluent Spanish speaker, because if someone in the family is not a fluent Spanish speaker, if you have people attending your program who are simply wanting to expose their kids to Spanish or who are learning Spanish together with their kids, that really limits what you can do in terms of Spanish language. If the kids are not able to follow a book that is fully in Spanish or a song that is fully in Spanish, and they don't have a parent who is fluent who can sort of fill them in, then you end up in a situation where you're primarily using English and teaching a few Spanish words. And that is a great kind of program, but it's not this program. So this program is really for families that speak Spanish at home where at least one parent is fluent. And that is still contains a huge range of language ability and experience. So, for example, I have one mom who attends who's Korean American, who was in the Peace Corps, and in her years in the Peace Corps learned to speak Spanish fluently and has been imparting Spanish to her 3-year-old son, and he speaks really quite well. They come to the program. There are a couple of families that come that are one parent is an immigrant and one is a white American who is very competent in Spanish, and they all speak Spanish at home. They speak exclusively Spanish with the kids at home. Recently, 2 of these families met. Both dads are white Americans who are great Spanish speakers, married to immigrants, and they really hit it off. They've had some play dates. That's very, very satisfying to see. There is a family that comes that lived in Colombia. They have 3 biological children. They also adopted a girl from Colombia while they were living there. When they moved to Williamsburg, they really wanted to help her maintain her language skills and her connection to her heritage. So they've come to the program. And we have families who are almost exclusively Spanish speakers, kids and parents. We have kids who are perfectly bilingual and kids for whom it's difficult to speak. They can mostly understand, but producing Spanish is a struggle, and their parents struggle to get them to respond in Spanish. There is a big range in the age of the kids who come. I say that it's for 0 to 10. The sweet spot really is preschool to early elementary school. Those are the kids who I think get the most out of it. But there are often older siblings who participate as well. They may not have anywhere else to go while the younger siblings are at the program. So sometimes we have tweens and teens there as well. And there is a lot of socioeconomic diversity in the program. I would say the majority of attendees are pretty solidly in the middle class, but by no means all. Okay, how do people find out about Cena con Cuentos? When I started the program, I was really concerned about it being for Spanish-speaking families, and I didn't want to advertise it broadly for that reason. And so it was sort of by invitation only. It was a targeted advertising only. And the way I did that was to distribute flyers to anybody that I heard speaking Spanish in the library. That is something that I still do, and it has been a successful way of recruiting people to the program. And also through community partners. So there have been a couple that have been our greatest recruiters to the program. One is called Child Development Resources. It's an agency that holds the contract for early childhood services in our area. They have caseworkers who meet with families individually. Some of those caseworkers have brought their families to the program and attended with them. That's been a really effective way of helping those families feel comfortable coming. And another is the Catholic Church in Williamsburg. There is a Spanish language formation ministry, and the head of that has invited me to come and talk to families that participate and has shared my flyers faithfully for years. Now, for the last year and a bit, the program has been advertised through all of the normal library marketing channels. That was a decision that the director made, and it's gone really well. Some people have told me that they've found out about the program from library marketing materials, and I really haven't had anybody get mad at me because they wanted to join and weren't allowed. Okay. So what are the goals of the program? These also have really evolved over time. So I think my initial goal was a little bit naive to introduce non-library users to the library through this program. That has happened to some degree with some families, but I think most of the families that come are library users anyway, or would be library users anyway. And it sort of evolved into developing a community of library ambassadors who would share about the resources and the services that we offer to their own friends and family. And that has happened to some degree. An example that was really meaningful to me of that happening was this spring. I was contacted by a mom who was looking for court-ordered community service hours for her son. She had gotten my name from a child development resources caseworker that she had worked with years before and had reached out to say, you know, where can I go to find these, to find community service options? And she said, call Sara, she'll help you. So that really made me feel good that I've become sort of a known person who is a Spanish speaker who wants to be helpful, that the library by extension is also a trusted community resource. Um, and 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 my thinking about goals has also evolved to really be that the building community is an end in itself. We have seen a lot of babies born into this program whose families were already attending. It's really exciting to see new babies come. Uh, we have seen lots of lovely connections made, including parents meeting other parents from their same home country. I've seen Hondurans make connections and Spaniards make connections that way. Also, there was a time a few years ago when two of the moms who came to the program had their own mothers visiting them from Latin America. And of course, those grandmas didn't know anyone else in Williamsburg besides their daughters and their families. But they met each other at Cena con Cuentos and ended up spending a lot of time together outside of the program during their couple months of visiting their daughters. Another goal is, and I was going to say that the goal of building community is really also shared by the families that participate. Many of them are coming to the program because they want to meet other Spanish-speaking families in the area for themselves to make friends, and also for their kids to have friends that also speak Spanish. They want their kids to see that other kids are speaking Spanish with their parents. Other kids know this language. Their parents aren't, just foisting this on them, but rather that it's fun, that it's cool to speak Spanish, that it's worth maintaining those skills, and that you have to practice if you want to maintain those language skills. So that is something that I feel like I can help with. I'm not qualified really to teach Spanish. I'm not trying to teach anybody Spanish, but I can push the kids a little bit to say, like, oh, tell me that in Spanish. And we get some practice in. And the message is, this is fun, this is cool, and look around, there are all these other families that also have this in common with you. Okay, why dinner? When I was first thinking about how to make a program that was really for families that speak Spanish at home, I was struggling to figure out how to schedule it. So I had some meetings with community partners, and one thing that I heard from those meetings was, we can only do evening programs if we're offering dinner. And so I thought, I can probably get some money from the Friends of the Library so that I can offer dinner. And it makes it so much more accessible to working parents if dinner is provided. If you are gonna go to work and then go out to an evening activity and then have to go home and make dinner and feed the kids and then try to get them in bed, that just feels, I think, impossible to people. So this providing dinner makes it much more accessible, and it gives us time. Like, it makes, I feel like, program worthwhile that we have these three components, that it's story time and it's some kind of playtime, and it's also dinner where people can connect. They have time to talk to each other. I have time to talk to new families that are joining, and really there is something special about eating together that helps people bond. What we're primarily getting food from grocery store catering. That's the most economical approach we've come up with. And I have a coworker who is my helper with the food, who places the order, who picks up the order, and sets up the food on the buffet tables. That is something that I have occasionally done by myself. And the ordering the food part is fine, but the pickup and trying to get to the program on time, I find incredibly stressful. So it's key to have a helper to handle that part. Let's switch gears for a minute and do a dinner related rhyme. This is a nest, so make your nest. Aquí puso la pajarita el huevo. Este lo agarró. Este lo partió. ¡Crac! Este lo cocinó. Este le echó la sal. Y este pícaro gordo se lo comió. I'll also do it in English. This is where the bird laid her egg. This one grabbed it. This one cracked it. Crack. This one cooked it. This one salted it. And this fat rascal ate it. I like to also extend this one by saying, now let's imagine it's a giant egg, un huevón. Show me what it would look like if the egg was huge. So, aquí puso la pajarita el huevón. Este lo agarró. Este lo partió. Crack. Este lo cocinó. Este le echó la sal. Y este pícaro gordo se lo comió. And we would do a little tiny egg too. Okay, so let me do a little bit more of like the nitty-gritty logistics of doing this program. So I mentioned it is grant funded, and we have reapplied for funding from the Friends of the Library about one year, and it's changed a little bit, but now we're asking for $5,000 from the Friends of the Library. And almost all of that money goes towards the catering. We're spending around $175 each time for grocery store catering. We also spend some money on serving supplies, craft supplies, occasionally toys. I am also going to try to order an Instant Pot. I've started making beans because a vegetarian family joined, and I wanted to make sure they would have something substantial. And the beans are very popular, but I've been using my personal Instant Pot, and that's not really working for my family. So I'm going to see if I can get a pressure cooker from the library. In the past, we have also used some of the funding to buy giveaway books from a book fair company. That was sort of part of the concept of the program at the beginning. I didn't feel that it was like core to the program. People who attend generally have library cards, or they get library cards, like they're accessing books. But I do collect donations that are not suitable to go in the collection. Sometimes we get other giveaway books, and it is a bonus, and it is exciting to the families when I can offer books in Spanish that they can keep. As you saw on the slide with the advertising text, I have a phone number on there. It's a Google Voice number that I set up for this purpose, so I'm not putting my real phone number out everywhere on flyers. And my email, I ask that people register by contacting me before they come. And I really just want to get some information from them, how many kids and what their ages are, any dietary restrictions, how did they hear about the program. So very often people will contact me before they come for the first time, but not always. When somebody comes to the program, then I make sure that I have their phone number, and I ask if I can send them reminders. So I have scheduled the program pretty consistently now for quite a while to be the first and third Tuesdays of the month. I'm not sure anybody remembers that except me. So I think it should be easy to remember, but I always send reminders, usually just the day before the program. That seems to be what people need to like have it fresh in their minds, so they'll really come. And I have tried asking for RSVPs so we could sort of better calibrate the food amounts. It doesn't seem to be more effective than just guessing at how many people will come. So we generally plan for about 40 people for food, but it's not really like feeding 40 adults because a lot of them are small children. What else? Okay. So let me talk a little bit about how the program has changed. I started it in 2019 in January, so we had a good year before the pandemic. At the beginning, there were 4 families that were coming, and I scheduled it as a 6-week session with a program a week. It felt like it was too much for me, but also for the families. Like that was just really regularly to be coming together. I have sometimes done only once a month, but then people are really looking for more than that. They will be asking me when the next one is. So I've settled on 2 per month, first and third Tuesdays. That's my night to close at the library. We start at 5 p.m. We end around 6:37, and the library closes at 8, so it really can't be any later. In the pandemic, we did some Zoom sessions for a while. We did a couple outdoor sessions. That's clearly a pandemic photo. Uh, those weren't super well attended, but they did sort of keep the thread alive. And we went back to doing in-person indoor meetings with food in February of 2022. So I've had quite a while now to sort of build back up again. And the program has grown to over 40 families that have attended in the last few months. We have also tried offering a program, offering the program half the time at an outreach site. There is a sort of food distribution and other services center, privately run center in a neighborhood where a lot of Spanish speakers live. And I have held the first session of the month there for about a year and a half. They have recently renovated, and I don't know that their space is going to work for the program anymore post renovation. And there was never quite the proof of concept that we were hoping for, which was that if we were in a place that was close enough to where people lived, that if they didn't have reliable transportation, they could still get there, that they might already be coming to that building for other services like food pickup, that if they were already there, that they would just come down. It happened like once or twice, but there wasn't really great proof of concept with that outreach model. I get better attendance when I do it at the library. Okay, and materials. I have still a pretty small collection of picture books in Spanish. The library's policy for years under a previous director was only donated materials in any language other than English were allowed. We could not purchase them. And that has changed, but I'm still working on getting an actual budget line for world language materials. So it's grown some, but it's still kind of limited. So I have a list of some of my favorite books for story time that is at that QR code. I try hard to balance authentic voices and representation with fun and familiarity. So the kids love Pete the Cat and they know Elephant and Piggy and they're really excited to see Elephant and Piggy. So sometimes we are doing translated Elephant and Piggy and Pete the Cat. And I also I'm careful about the translations that I choose because I find that most translations that are coming out now are of reasonable quality, but there's still the occasional one where the translation is really bad. And so I just won't use anything with bad translation. I've used a couple of these professional books to find songs and rhymes. Once Upon a Cuento and Read Me a Rhyme in Spanish and English are both from ALA Editions. The Egg in the Nest finger play is from Read Me a Rhyme. And I also have at that QR code link, I have the songs and rhymes that I use collected with all of their lyrics. And I have just a list of artists that I like for learning new songs and some playlists that I've made. Great. I think that is everything I have. So I would love to answer any questions.
Let's see. So let me go back up here. Looks like James. Oh, wait. James asks, do you make your own translations or use a translation service?
I primarily made my own translations with help from a friend who attends the program. So I have a translation of Sleeping Bunnies that I love to do. I sort of started it, and my friend who's from Puerto Rico helped me refine it and make sure that the grammar was right. Uh, I've done I've done a few of songs that I love to use in English, some of which are from the music school. Uh, I have not used a translation service.
That's the only question I'm seeing so far, but if you all have any, feel free to put those in the chat. Um, Sarah, I have a question for you. You shared some of the things that you've learned along the way and the way your program has evolved and how you tried to do the outreach kind of change about it. But I'm just curious, what are some of the other like big lessons learned that over the years? Because it sounds like you've been doing this for several years, which is just amazing, and through the pandemic.
Yeah, it's been over 5 years, but interrupted, interrupted by the course. Big lessons learned. Uh, I would say that one of them is that for pretty much all families, having helping kids maintain their language skills once they start school is a difficult thing. It doesn't matter what your education level is, like that's just hard. Once kids are surrounded by English all the time at school, they're often not motivated to speak Spanish at home. And so that is like a common struggle. And it's something that I've adapted to in my program is to really lean into the Spanish, and I started out kind of doing a lot more books that were like primarily English with some Spanish words, and I've gone towards much more towards like fully books in Spanish, speaking pretty much exclusively Spanish during the program, because that's what parents want. They really want their kids to practice. They really want them to um, get as much exposure as possible.
And what a wonderful way to model that with having the families come together and making it a communal thing. I think that's just such a wonderful aspect of this program. It looks like we do have a question. What kind of food handling situation do you need to have if you are also making additional food, like you mentioned, making beans?
What I've been told is that legally the library is allowed to serve food and we don't have any kind of certification requirements. Um, Obviously, I'm being careful, but there isn't any kind of like liability that we have to worry about. I am considering doing a potluck for Thanksgiving this year, or inviting people to bring dishes that are special to their family for Thanksgiving this year. And our library has done sort of potluck situations for patrons in the past, so I know that that is allowed. Um, it almost seems like maybe there should be more requirements of us since we're serving complete meals, but there aren't.
Thank you. We do have another. Do you think there is value in semi-fluent librarians incorporating bilingual stories into story time?
I do. I think that it's sort of a tricky line to walk because you can't offer a Spanish language story time if you're not comfortable speaking with people in Spanish. But there are so many great books that are primarily English that use Spanish words, and where you can you can teach animal names and colors and numbers uh and I know that there is a real appetite for that. Like I've had lots of people in my community ask me to offer that kind of story time where it's just get a little taste of Spanish. Um, and I just don't have a time to do it. And our meeting rooms are pretty well booked on weekends, so it's like I don't have a good time to do that. But I do think that there's an appetite for that, and there is value in doing that as well.
Another one, it's looks like it's two parts. How do you use local Hispanic service organizations, and are they ever partners with you for this program or similar ones in your library region?
I have primarily just done outreach with local Hispanic services, where I might come and talk about the program, or else just set up a table and explain what the library offers. Um, the what parents are telling me is that Cena con Cuentos is kind of the only game in town in terms of like getting kids together to speak Spanish. There aren't really extracurricular classes or playgroups that are formal, at least, um, other than my program. I'm not sure I answered the question. Did I miss a part, Jen?
Um, no, I think you kind of touched on it. I think the question was, yeah, how do you work with local Hispanic service organizations? So, yeah. Uh, let's see here. This one, I definitely struggle when I do story times age for wide age ranges. When there are 10-year-olds and toddlers, how do you like to work with that?
Yeah. Um, it's tricky because you're kind of always losing somebody's attention when the age range is that big. I find that it helps to position the older kids as experts and turn to them and ask them for answers, ask them to supply a word in Spanish, um, ask them to a couple times ago, I asked the older kids to set up the obstacle course for playtime, to be in charge of like putting all the pieces out that I had brought. And they really liked that. They liked being told that they're the big kids. They like helping. So that's what I try to do to engage older kids. And then for the toddlers, I pretty much just move quickly to another song, pretty much. Just get through my book and then we do Sleeping Bunnies.
Cute. This next one, any challenges you have come across being a gringa running a Spanish language program?
My receptive skills are not as good as they could be, and especially when um, the adults have a wide variety of accents, and so I feel like I am not always I'm not always keeping up with the conversations that I'm having with the parents. That's something am that I am working on. So that's one. It's like I have to ask people to repeat themselves a fair amount. Um, there have been moments when I felt really awkward when I was sort of doing like some books that have Dia de Muertos sort of motifs in them, and sort of not knowing how that would be received coming from me. But I again, like I just try to use books that are authentic, that are, if they're about Dia de Muertos, that preferably have a Mexican author, and And then I I just had a really the participants are very very forgive like very accepting of me and like very kind and have sort of received my efforts really graciously. So I have felt awkward, but it has mostly there haven't been any sort of I can't think of a time where I felt like I really sort of had overstepped or made, put my foot in my mouth.
We have another one. Do you have statistics about where your Spanish speaking patrons are or were from?
Um, I don't have anything formal. I just know from talking to people that there's been a lot of different countries of origin represented. Definitely Mexico, Panama, Honduras, El Salvador, Peru, Colombia, Spain, Venezuela, at least those. Puerto Rico.
There's a comment that just popped up. Thank you for your candor, Sarah. This was fun. Thank you for acknowledging language and cultural awkwardness in your program. It inspires me to keep going in my own bilingual programs. Keep it light and have a teachable spirit, right?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind.
Give
Do we
folks
have time to do one short little song? One more short song? Okay. I learned a peekaboo song recently from YouTube. Peekaboo in Spanish is cuckoo, and it goes like this: Cuckoo, cuckoo, ¿dónde estás tú? Yo te veo. Cuckoo, 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 ¿dónde estás tú? Yo te veo. Cuckoo, cuckoo. So I've been doing that with scarves, and it's a hit with the toddlers.
Oh, that's adorable. I bet they're like, that would be great for a baby story time too. I love it. We did have one more pop in. What topics have you chosen to do during the years?
um, I usually do a sort of not explicitly holiday, but sort of Halloween-y, Dia de Muertos-ish story time in October. I do something about food in November. And then I might do like a love theme story time in February. And I did Mother's Day one last year around Mother's Day. I often just sort of fall back on sort of animal story time or underwater. I in the summertime I like to do outdoor playtime, so I'll move the activity portion to the end. We'll do story time, eat dinner, and then we'll go out on the plaza and we'll have like water toys. So if we're going to do water play, then I might do a sort of under the sea or bubble themed story time.
There's one more, and then we'll wrap it up so folks can have their break. What kind of food do you usually request? Mexican, Italian, etc.
In the past, we had gotten food from a variety of restaurants, and like the Greek restaurant was really popular and the Salvadoran food was really popular. We've mostly just been doing catering from Publix because it's just far cheaper to do that than to do restaurant food. And so we're generally it's pretty much the same each time. It's like popcorn chicken because that goes really far because the pieces are so little, and potato wedges, and then we'll have like a fruit tray and a vegetable tray or sometimes a salad, and then I'm doing beans now, so it's pretty basic. um we've been told that we needed to scale back the spending on food, so at that point we just switched to just we said we'll just do grocery store then. And with like the occasional like special meal, we might do pupusas from our one Salvadoran place in town.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, so much for sharing this program and your experience and your knowledge. This has been tremendously helpful. So thank you for your time. Our next session will begin in 15 minutes. So y'all please take a break, drink some water, walk around a little bit, and we'll see you soon.